We are now on the air. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another edition of Dad Advice, July 6th, 2020. Sorry, I'm a little bit late today. Had life get in the way, but happy to be here a little bit late nonetheless. So let me go ahead and put a little bit of my information in the chat here in Reddit. So go ahead and get that going. And then we can go off to the races. And if you got a question, please feel free to go ahead, type it in, and put as much detail as possible, because that helps me answer your question as opposed to just speaking more broadly about the general topic that you raise. So if that's something you're looking for, specific answers, give me a real question, and I'll be happy to speak to it. So I've also put my phone number in there. 470-575-0111 if you want to chat through something. Sometimes I find that to be a fun thing to do, and people don't often take me up on it, but I always welcome it and encourage it. So what should I talk about on this fine Monday? Trying to think of something maybe I've learned in the last day that I can share with you, since there are no questions, but I guess I'll just start like I always start, speaking about why do I say you are beautiful? Why is that my general message that I'm trying to put out there? And I think it's because something I learned a long time ago, and it's called the whole person theory. And I think what we tend to do, what you tend to do, what I tend to do, is look at the one or two negatives and say that's who we are. But the reality is that's part of who we are. We're a whole person. So there might be one or two negatives that we're focusing on, but I want to encourage us to look more broadly in general in life. That's one of my messages, is don't just look at the specific, don't look at the micro, look at the macro. So that's in general what I want to encourage, but specifically around our own attributes, I want us to get out of our head a little bit, stop focusing on the one or two negative things that seem to sit there, and instead see ourselves as that whole beautiful person, the person that has a couple negative traits and hundreds of positive traits. That's the message. So I want you to feel beautiful. I want you to feel whole, right? And that's how I want you to view other people. I want you to see them with some negatives, but as whole people. And I think that, will stop a lot of the comparisons that we do. That stops a lot of the judgments that we make, and allows for a lot more. And I think it's an honest approach. I think it's an honest approach to life. So I just want to start with that and share that, and then we'll kind of take it from there. So can you see your own beauty? Do you see that you're beautiful? And I think what happens is once we feel that way, we actually can kind of blossom and we can feel free, right? Because as long as we're comparing and we're bogged down by all that mental gymnastics of life, it's hard to really feel that inner freedom that you can do anything. But once you really feel your own beauty and you stop the comparing and you see that you're grounded in the world in a solid place, that's when you're truly living free and you're flying. So that's what I want to encourage. That's kind of my goal, right? If there's a goal of this whole thing that I'm doing, it's to teach how to become a free person according to your own path, because it is 100% going to be according to your path. It's not my path. Every one of us are on a different path, a unique path, and a path that only we can follow and take. And my goal is just to kind of maybe be a guide in some of that. So, okay, I see we got some stuff coming in now. So awesome. I really appreciate that, because it's really interesting. I have a really tough time just talking. I don't really know where to take things. But I think the questions provoke thought, and then the thought can provoke talking. So, good afternoon, Froggadell. Welcome back. Am I Canadian? I'm not Canadian, but I'm going to tell you a funny Canadian story. I will share a funny Canadian story. So I was in Banff with my family, and I was kind of a typical American, I guess, that I rented a minivan, and I was just driving along, but I didn't want to lose my driver's license, so I didn't actually bring it with me, because I'm driving in a foreign country, and usually in a foreign country, whatever. Let's just go with that, right? And I got pulled over for speeding. So this is my Canadian story. I got pulled over for speeding, and there's a lady also who got pulled over for speeding, and the police officers, kind of saying, "Hello, can I see your license?" I'm like, "Actually, officer, I don't have a license." And so he says to me, "Okay, just hold on a minute. Let me go deal with this other lady who I pulled over." And then, so he goes, he deals with the lady, she drives off, and the officer comes back to me, and I'm like, "Oh, crap. Like I'm literally pulled over for speeding. I can't prove who I am. I'm in Canada." So he goes, the officer says to me, "I'm sorry, sir, for making you wait, but I didn't want to let you go and have her feel bad. So, but you're free to go." And that was the end of it. But I just thought that was such a Canadian story. He didn't, he apologized to me for making me wait, and he didn't want her to feel bad. And that's my story of Canada. And I've now shared it. Then maybe people know that story. All right. Is it good to believe in higher power? Nacho Average Joe. I like your username, Nacho. Is it good to believe in a higher power? Okay, so here's the thing. Let's talk about higher power. And I think you see higher power. We talked about religion yesterday. If you want my take on religion, if you want to go on, I have a sub where I kind of post my things, so it's easy to find. But yesterday, actually, we talked a lot about religion and kind of my take on religion. And also my YouTube channel. I post on live. I kind of simulcast to YouTube. So. And I need 20 people to subscribe on YouTube so I can name it, and then I'll stop asking. So if you do appreciate what I'm saying and you want to subscribe, that's actually a personal favor. So thank you for that. We're getting close. I think in about a week from now, I'll get to stop asking people to do that. So, so do I believe in a higher power? So the answer is, and this is, it's kind of really what we talked about yesterday, but I think it's a broad question of what a higher power is. So if we're talking about a manipulative higher power, I don't believe there's a manipulative higher power. Do I believe that, so the short answer is no. That's my short answer, right? So a manipulative higher power, and I use the word manipulative not in a negative way, but I don't have a better word for manipulative. In fact, if you have a good word for me instead of manipulative, I'd love it. I'm looking for a word that connotes creating a certain outcome, but not manipulative. Manipulative usually, right, is me manipulating you. It's like there's something like aggressive. There's something that's a little bit underhanded about it. So that's not what I'm talking about when I say manipulative higher power, because there's nothing wrong with it. But I'd love a word that kind of, but it's manipulating, right? It's creating some outcome. So no, I don't believe there's a higher power that has an outcome. But I also don't think we're in control. And I think that's, from that perspective, you can say, yes, there's a higher power, because, and it's not a thing, it's just the reality that we're not in control. So it feels like there's a higher power that we can kind of surrender to the world, right? And so I do very much believe in surrendering ourselves to reality in a way. And it's also something I talked about that 2 days ago, if you want to hear more about what surrender means. But so from that perspective, right, you do have to kind of surrender to this higher power, or else you're always fighting it. And there is this reality, there's this external reality that you're subject to. So in that way, yes, I do believe in a higher power, but it's not a thing. It's not a tangible thing. It's more of an intangible reality, if that makes sense. So that's my belief in higher power. Never thought about that before. So, okay. Ruggedelic, is there another type of mirror we can look into? You know what? I don't remember where I was going with that earlier. Feel free to put a little more into that, and I'll talk to it. And I'm going to skip, and I'm going to come back to you, DJ Malcolm, in a minute, because I think, this is somewhat connected. Influencing. Maybe. To me, like, manipulating is like there's something hands-on. I like the hands-on. I think is what I'm trying to say. Influencing is more subtle, typically, to me, than like trying to arrange certain things, if that makes sense. So an influence to me would be more this process of, it's not influencing is not the right word either, because right, it's more influencing is more subtle than manipulating, which is more aggressive. So do I believe in free will? So that's where I want to go, and then I'll come back to some of the questions. Do I believe in free will? I like the question, first of all, right? The question is not, is there free will or is there not free will? It's, do I believe in free will? Which I think is a great way to phrase it, because it is, to some extent, I don't know that you can, it's a belief, right? Do you believe in it or not? So, so yes and no, like most of my answers. I think that we do have freedom to choose, but I believe that to a large extent, we're programmed in a certain direction. So I'll give you an example. And I think this takes it to an extreme, but I think when somebody is on the street and they kill someone else, I think that's society's fault to some extent, right? So it's obviously the person pulled the trigger, they shot the gun, whatever, they did the action, and I hold them responsible, but I more so hold society responsible for that action, right? Because society created an environment that led to that outcome. So he has free will in a way, but I think that it's very few times in life when we're really in a position of choice. Rather, our environment, our, everything that's we've grown up around has encouraged us in a certain direction. Does that make sense? So yes, I do believe in free will. I believe I have, I can choose, like, it's dinner tonight can either be, I have scallops I can make, or I can choose shrimp. They're both in my fridge, right? And I have free will to choose either of those for dinner tonight. So yes, clearly there's free will there. I don't think there's anything other than that. But if we want to look at it, and this isn't a great example, but let's step back a little bit, we could say, well, that I might choose one over the other because of some aspect of thought that comes into the process. So does that make sense? And I did notice some people came in, I kind of missed my opportunity, but typically whenever people join, I like to talk about your false truth, because this is something that I think that if I can get out in the world, I can impact the world positively, and that's part of my goal here. So I want to talk about false truths, and then I'm going to come back to DJ Malcolm's question. So a false truth is the one thing that you tell yourself about yourself that's not true. It's an underlying motivating factor in your life that you're unaware of. And it's something that if you can create awareness around and become aware of, you can fundamentally change your happiness and your approach to the world. If anybody wants to call, I'm going to throw my information again in the thread here, 470-575-0111. We can talk through an example of what I mean by this false truth. And I'm happy to do that with someone one-on-one and kind of do the exercise, try to do the exercise at least, of getting rid of the false truth. But if nothing else, want to plant the seed so you can start thinking about what is the one thing that you tell yourself that's basically breaking you, right? Creating you, trapping you, keeping you from your ultimate freedom. Some people, and I always, I used to say I'm not enough. That was my false truth, and I'm sure it's still in me. These are things that are very hard to get to. Now, it didn't start as I'm not enough. It started as, someone said I'm crap, right? And I dig a little bit deeper, and then, you get another understanding that, and you keep going down until you get to that one thing. They're like, oh, okay, that's it. So I just wanted to throw that out there as something that hopefully you've may never have heard of, and now you can reflect on it and see if you can find it true in yourself, because I do believe it's a path to freedom. So, okay, so let's go. My ex broke with me for another guy who she was friends with our whole relationship, and it really hurt. Do you have any advice? So, yeah, of course that hurts, and I'm sorry that you're on the receiving end of an unfaithful potentially unfaithful partner. At the end of the day, relationship is about honesty. It's about truth. A couple things I would tell you, anytime we're feeling hurt because we feel rejected, which I think is part of what the hurt would be. I always just want to point out that it's not about you. It's about that person, right? So that person was incapable of being in relationship with you, but it's not because of who you are. It's because of who they are, right? Just like you get to choose who you're in relationship or who you're not in relationship with. And if you reject someone else, it's not personal about them really. It's just that they don't work for you. So too, the other way around, it works the other way, that when they decide to leave or decide not to be in part of the relationship, it's not a reflection on you. So that's the first thing that I just want to kind of throw out there, make sure you fully understand that her actions around you and deciding not to be in a relationship about you aren't about you. Now, so that's the hurt part, right? So there's still sadness, right? We get attached to people and they leave, and that's a sad thing. But the reality is especially somebody, and I don't know if she cheated on you or not, but, somebody that leaves, better that they do it now than later on, right? Because now you have an opportunity to take the lessons you learned, right? Maybe some of the red flags that you saw in the relationship, and then you can move that forward to the next person and find that person that really is a good fit for you. Because like I always talk about, there's 3.5 billion men and 3.5 billion women in the world. So, there's a couple more options out there, a few of which are going to be better than what you had. So, what else can I throw out there? So, I mean, that's really it. It's just, and then the other piece is just understand that when someone does this, it's a sign of their immaturity. And you seem like you might be a mature person. Thank you for the gold, right? That's, and so you're going to find someone. We always find people in general, is what I read once, and I think it's pretty true, that are on a similar emotional plane as we are, right? So the more we've grown as individuals, the more we're going to demand in maturity and emotional intelligence in our partner. So you weren't evenly matched, I'm going to assume. And so now you can go and find that person that's going to be a better match for you. But either way, I am really sorry. And I know it can be hurtful. It can be heart-rendering and heart ripped out from you. And you can lose faith in humanity and faith in life. But understand that it's about her. And you can now go and forgive her, because as long as you don't forgive her, you're going to be attached to her. So you have to forgive her, and you'll be able to move on. Okay. And if you feel stupid, don't feel dumb. If there is some aspect of you that's kind of like, oh, I feel dumb that I should have seen this coming, give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. You're just human. I'm just human. We're all just human. We got to give ourselves a break in life. I think that's really important. With the toxicity of the world right now, how can we look at the positive? So I think the key is, and this is my key, is that you have to not look at the world. There's certain things you might be able to do, right? And I encourage you to do those things. But don't watch the news. Don't be in social media settings where that's what you're looking at. It's toxic, and it will bring you down. So my advice and what I do for myself is I just don't watch those things, and I don't read those things. Am I aware of it? Of course. You can't not be aware of it. Am I going to try to create change? Absolutely. But I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm constantly inundated with all the negatives of the world. That's not a healthy environment to place myself. So I'm going to create boundaries that allow me to step away from that and not sink under the pressures of the negativity that I see in the world. I'm also going to step back and I'm going to focus on the bigger picture. We talked earlier about bigger picture and bigger picture focus. And what I really want everyone to understand is that there is a bigger picture here. And the bigger picture is that we're a lot better now than we've ever been in history. And so that gives me hope for the future, that's what we're building to. We're building towards a better and better place. Now, it's a slow process, and it's a process that has ups and downs, but there is an outcome that I can foresee, that tomorrow is going to be better than today, just like today in certain ways is better than yesterday. So that's kind of my advice around that stuff. It is absolutely toxic. It's absolutely toxic. And, that can't be underestimated. And then once you know what's going on, how's it going to motivate you? How's it going to motivate you to create positive action in the world? What are you going to do about it? You're going to go and vote, right? You're going to convince your friends to vote. You're going to make some phone calls. You're going to knock on doors. Are you doing something about the problem, or are you just kind of complaining about it, right? Now, I'm not saying don't complain about it, but I'm saying be real with yourself if that's all you're doing, right? I think that's important, that we're honest with ourselves of what we're doing or what we're not doing. Let's just own what we do. That's all I kind of ask there. So, but I do believe that we're in a upward trend, even if right now, right, the market is down, perhaps, right? The overall trajectory of life is up. So that gives me hope, and that's what I tend to follow along with. Do I do TED Talks? Yeah, no, like I said, I don't really have a topic to speak to. I was talking about this earlier. I really just sit here and go to questions, because that enables a lot of the stuff that I've thought about over the years. And while everybody's here, if you want to subscribe on Reddit, you can go to r/VDad and subscribe there. And then on YouTube, there's a link also higher up in the messages. And if you can subscribe, I just need 20 more people, and then I can stop asking people, which I really don't. It feels very pandering, and I don't want to be doing it, but I do want to name my channel. So, okay. Is there such a thing as a face only a father could love? So it's interesting, and so I think you're talking about physical beauty. And there's a couple things to think about, I think, in physical beauty. One is that everybody's attracted to something else, which is really interesting. So, I spent a lot of my time in life worrying that I wasn't attractive enough. And I think a lot of us do. I think most of us probably do. And what I've kind of found is that there's always someone who finds us attractive. It's just a weird thing. It's a reality. So, and especially if we have a good personality, right? I think it's easier in some ways for guys, right, than for girls. That's societal, and it's sad, but I do think there's some reality around that. There's a lot more societal pressure for women to kind of look certain ways, whereas women actually are probably brighter than men, and basically are able to see through that a little bit better than men. In fact, I am convinced that overall women are socially more adept, more social intelligence than men on the whole. But no, I don't think there's a face that only a father could love. I think that every face will have many lovers, and I've seen that time and time again, and experience, seen that through people that, you just, both men and women, that you're like, huh? But they don't just look at the face, because a person isn't just, right? We talked about the whole person. A person's not just their face. A person's not just their body. A person is the whole package. So if they have a great personality, or if they're kind, or whatever it is that the other person appreciates, right? That's how we get into a relationship with someone, is that there's some reflection in that person of something that we want, that we see in the other person. So once we have that, the other stuff is not as important. Now, for some people, it's just attraction, right? They just want someone that looks a certain way. But not everyone's, that's the cool thing. There are lefties in the world and there are righties in the world. There's a little bit of everything in the world. So, and I think that gives us all hope, and it gives us all, I don't know, just a way to look at the world, I think, a little bit more honestly. Okay. Popcorn Probs. Hi, Rita. Dad, my parents abandoned me throughout my childhood. I'm 25 now and still struggling with that abandonment. What can I do to get over this? So can you give me a little bit more information? I mean, that's horrible. I don't know if that means a physical abandonment or emotional abandonment. But let's just talk about how to get over abandonment. And thank you for the award there. Let's just talk about how to get over abandonment, maybe. How do we work on ourselves? And honestly, the abandonment, I'd go back, and I don't know if you heard what I was talking about before earlier about, when this woman kind of dumped somebody for her friend. I think it's kind of the same thing. Thank you for the award. It's really kind of the same thing here, that that we have to understand it's not personal, right? And that's going to be your key work is really, and this is at a much deeper level, because anything about our parents, right? That's a lot of work. If you want to, anything that is like a childhood trauma that we want to uproot from ourselves, that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of different modalities, right? We're going to have to approach it from different things. We might have to, maybe do some hypnosis to help just kind of do some subconscious stuff. And we're going to have to do some self-affirmation and some child work. There's a lot of different modalities that you're going to need to do to uproot that abandonment. And also the other side of that, right, that can also help is having someone in your life that doesn't abandon you, right? Finding that person that will stick around. And it's going to be key as well. So there's a lot of things. It's going to take time. You're 25, but I think if you work on it over the course of the next 10, 15 years, you can move past that. Now, a lot of people will just bury it within. And I think that's an unhealthy place, because it means they're going to feel that, right, abandonment the rest of their life. And that goes back to that false truth I was talking about earlier, right? So we have a choice that we can either face on these fears that we have, or we can let them, we can bury them and try to close the box on them. In my experience, if you bury them and try to close the box, it doesn't work, right? They keep pushing the box open. They keep popping out. So to me, in my experience, the goal is instead to work on the work, do the work, face the fear, and walk through the fear, because that's how it's going to work. You're going to walk through your fear of abandonment to a better place. And good luck with that. But it's not you. Just know it's not you. It was your parents, and they're pretty shitty. Okay. Changing, managing, or operating, good synonyms. Shaping. Shaping could work. All right. I'm just going down through some of the comments here. I'm a loser, Yandex6. I don't know if you're still here. You're absolutely not a loser. That's just the thought in your mind that you're telling yourself, but you're absolutely not. And the only person that thinks that is probably you. And that's how you know you're not a loser, because chances are you're not right if the rest of the world's telling you you're not a loser. So let me just kind of de-Jordan. How's it not about you? Someone leaves you, it's entirely about you. It's really not. It's not personal about you, if that makes sense. I guess that's maybe the differentiating factor. So yes, they aren't interested in you, but that's because of who they are. It's not a reflection on who you are, if that makes sense. I'm sorry you don't have a dad. Bad girl, mad girl, sad girl. I hope you can find happiness. How do I become friends with my dad? I like that one. Let's do that. So I think it depends on your age, right? So, but I think as you become probably a teenager, you can really become friends. I mean, you can probably even before that you can, but especially as you become a teenager and you can start having conversations. And I think it's just like a friendship with anyone else. It's about opening yourself up and making yourself a little bit vulnerable in conversation. So, and I'm going to assume you're in college, right? But I think that's really going to be what it's about. Is that are you vulnerable with your dad, and can he be vulnerable with you, right? Because friendships, that's in my mind between a friendship and an acquaintance, right? An acquaintance is someone we see, we shoot the breeze, we say how's it going, and then they move on. However, a friend to me is somebody that I can tell them what's really going on in my life, what's going on in my relationship or at work or what are my, whatever's vulnerable to me, I can share that, and they share vulnerability back, and there's some reciprocal vulnerability. That's what a friendship is. So it's no different with a parent, right? If you want to move that relationship to one of a friendship, I think you just have to make the statement, hey, you know what? It's time for us really to move from a father-daughter or father-son relationship to let's be friends, and some understanding of let's be vulnerable. Let's have some vulnerability in the relationship. And that's going to be a change, but I definitely think it's doable. And sometimes it's just kind of making maybe dad aware of, hey, I'm kind of a little bit more grown up now. I don't really need the guidance anymore. And again, it depends where you are, right? Because you might still need the guidance, but not know it. Depending on what your age is. But if you're 30, let's say, and you're like, hey, you know what, Dad, you don't need to worry about me anymore. You don't need to take care of me anymore. I got my stuff together, and I'm well on my way to being an adult. And as part of that, I want an adult relationship. I want a friendship. So let's create that together and spend time together and do that. So, cool question though. How do I find the motivation to work on my thesis when it's so difficult? So how do we do things that are hard? So, yeah. So how do we create motivation? I guess is the essence of the question. What are some things that we can do to create motivation? I was always self-motivated. I was talking about earlier about my false belief, which is I wasn't enough. So I was motivated to prove to the world that I was enough. And that meant doing everything that I did to accomplish things. So if you don't have that self-motivation, and it could be that, it could be the self-motivation of getting the PhD, of making a lot of money. How do you create motivation? And the answer probably is you just got to do it. And so you have to have a system that forces you to do it. I'm going with the assumption that there's no executive functioning issue, there's no ADHD. This is really just there's a lot of hard work in front of me and I don't want to do it. So you know what? I'll tell you what, a big part of being an adult is doing things we don't want to do. And that's just reality. And the more we push it off, the more pain it gives us. So by surrendering to our reality that we have to get the work done, that in and of itself gets it done without some of the motivation. Breaking it up, I would also say, especially a thesis, right, is a big thing. So really, and I hope you have the skill set to really break the project up so you're not drinking from a fire hose, and really outlining what you're trying to accomplish, and then here are the bite-sized steps. So a project plan. Right? I think sometimes when we're looking at something that's a huge endeavor, it kind of it just overwhelms us, right? And so by breaking it up and saying, okay, well, this is how I'm going to approach this whole project, can help us create some motivation because we're not as overwhelmed. The overwhelmingness, that overwhelming feeling, just kind of overruns our motivating, our internal motivation. So that would be my other thing I would say is to try to break it down into some more, eatable, sizable chunks. But good luck. What's your thesis on? Actually, I'm curious. Okay, so what else we got here? Is Chipotle every day bad for you? It depends what you're having there. But in general, I would say it's all about balance in life. So find balance. But I do think you could probably make a healthy play there, right? They got vegetables, they got beans, they got meats. So I think actually from a fast food place in general, I think you could probably do better there than most other fast food places. But the reality is it's all about balance, right? Let's all find balance in life, in our eating, in our sleeping, in our fun, in our work, in our whatever we're doing, right? Let's find that place of balance. Where do you draw the line between comfort and familiarity and love? Well, and I don't know if you're referring back to the discussion we were talking about earlier, um, but I think you can have love without being comfortable, and I think you can be familiar with someone without love. So I think love is a feeling of, for me, in my experience, of where I really see a person's beauty and I really see them for who they are. And sometimes you can be in love, but not really be fully comfortable with the person you're in love with. And that doesn't really work, right? Because I think you need to have both comfort and love. So actually, I think that answers it. But yeah, I think they're two separate things, both of which are needed in a relationship. What's your advice on self harm? Kind of, I guess I can't really skip over that one. So first of all, thing to remember is I'm just a dad, so I have no credentials, nothing professional, um, and this is just advice from what I've learned over the years, right? And like all advice, I hope you'll get advice from many people, and then figure out what's appropriate for your unique path that you're on. And frankly, the I can give you a piece of advice now that won't fit, but in 10 years, if I'd meet you and give you the same advice, it might fit. So advice has a time component to it. It has a personal component to it. But the reality is that I'm certainly not a mental health professional. I'm a business guy. So with that in mind, um, my first advice is to find a therapist. That's, I think, the most important thing is finding someone you feel comfortable talking to about why you feel a need to self-harm. And I think that's the biggest piece of advice is really getting clear on that and doing the work to understand why you feel that need for yourself, right? Don't you want to be free from self-harm? Don't you want to be free from whatever demons are chasing you, right? If you're an alcoholic, I don't mean you, but somebody's, an alcoholic, right? There's something that's provoking that drinking, right? There's some anxiety or whatever if you're an anxious person, right? So there's something that's provoking that anxiety. Don't you guys want to be free of those things and create awareness of them is the only way to really be free of those things. And it's a scary, scary process, right? And this goes back to what we're talking about, right? For maybe this person's in feelings of abandonment or all these other, feelings that are there. But we have to walk through the fear and realize that it doesn't even exist. And that's the experience. It's such a cool experience. I hope you all have, that experience at some point in your life where you can see the fear in front of you and walk through the fear to the other side and realize that this big thing that you thought was there was nothing at all. And I've had that experience tens of times. And every time I just like welcome it because it's such a cool feeling to walk through your fear. But that's kind of, I guess, my advice, and thank you for the award. and I do hope that for your sake, right, not just for the world's sake, but for your own sake, that you can find peace with that. Just a lot of comments here from when we had a big visitor influx. And you're welcome. Thank you to all for joining. In fact, if this has been helpful for you, if you don't mind just saying thank you. And then because I do go back typically and read through and try to catch questions on the next stream. I'm here usually 5 o'clock Eastern. Today I started at 6, so about an hour and a half ago would be my normal time for being here, answering questions. And if you look through the chat, you can see my YouTube channel, and you can see my Reddit channel, and you can catch me not live if it's something that if I've said stuff of value that you want to follow kind of where I'm going with things. And you're welcome for the positive stream safe haven. Okay, we got Sugar Saccharin. No, Sugar Saccharin. Hey, I just landed a job interview for a job I'm really interested in, and it relates to my college degree. Any quick tips for phone interview prep? So, okay, yeah. So how can you prep for a job interview? So when you're getting a job interview, the thing to realize is that you're in a sales role. And I would recommend everybody read Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which the original title was How to Influence Men in Business. And then that became a not great title, so they changed the name. But the point is, I do think it's a fundamental book that everybody should read. I'd recommend that book. It's an easy read. He just tells stories. But I will tell you what I think is the most important thing in that book that I learned when I was younger, which is that any communication that you do needs to be with the perspective of the person you're talking to. So that means on the interview, you need to be taking the mindset of not who you are, but of what does the person on the other end of the interview want to hear. So, and what also might be their worries about hiring you, so you can proactively talk to it. I'll tell you another secret that I heard, and I don't know who said it, but it's a brilliant idea, which is that if you want somebody to have a perspective of you, tell them what that perspective is, which means, this is a really good thing, because what happens is when you say, hey, this is who I am, people start looking and seeing that's who you are, because they'll self-influence themselves, right? They'll create that they'll perpetuate that belief that you've created. So anyway, so back to the job interview, how would I kind of put all these things together is that I would spend some time thinking about why you're qualified for the job. First of all, I would talk with energy before you go and have the phone call. Maybe do a little bit of breath work, and I'll just teach you what it is. And I don't even know whose idea it is, but you just breathe, just kind of pump yourself up, right? Get some energy, right? Because I want you to come across with energy on the call. It doesn't take, you can just do that for like 10 seconds and you'll feel it. It pumps you up. So get a little bit of energy before the call, so it sounds like you have some energy in you. And then you're going to go and you're going to talk about all your strengths, while, obviously not in an egotistical way, but saying why you think you're such a good fit for the job, right? Kind of bringing out those points and saying kind of, this is the kind of person I am, and kind of bringing all those things. And if there are parts where you think you're not as qualified, I want you to pivot those things, right? That's what politicians do, right? So I want you to, let's say you don't have enough experience like everybody else. I don't want you to say, I don't have enough experience. I want you to come up with something like, I haven't worked on this exact project, but I've worked on similar projects, right? I want you to bring out what you have done. So I do all those things. I'd also, in general, just at the end of the call, I'd ask, get the person's email address, and I'd send them a nice, well thought out thank you note, perhaps even write it and scan it back in as a PDF. Do something to set yourself apart, and then follow up with them maybe 2 days later and just say, hey, you know what? And in that note, by the way, say, I want this job. I'm a great fit for X, Y, and Z reasons. I was so impressed with, what you said, and I want this job, because it takes away some of the risk from them putting their effort and choice into you when there might be other people that they're considering. So make it easy for them. And so that would be my general approach. And then follow up a couple days later to saying, hey, just wanted to say hi and thanks. Just something like that. So show and try to in some way show tenacity, show some aspect of intelligence, right? Show these basic things, and I think you'll be well prepped for it. Good luck with the job. Tell us what happens. Come back. So M. Dalla says, this year I've quit smoking cigarettes and weed, quit an abusive relationship, moved to New York City, which I guess is supposed to be a good thing. That's just a joke. All right, quit drinking, and now I'm working on carb, sugar, and Tate's cookies. Rocket, M. Dalla 1616. Rocket. You got it going. Keep it rocking. That's awesome. Good job. What do you do if your dad is gay? I don't know that I understand the question. Yeah, I'm not sure that I understand the question. Yeah, if your dad's gay, your dad's gay. I mean, it's every person's different, right? So I don't know that that's really any different than you'd say your dad works as a mechanic, or I don't know, just something. It's an attribute of your dad, right? I don't think that makes them any different from a dad perspective. Just a kind of a sexual preference. Okay. Do you have a one that got away? So I'll tell you something about ones that got away. Is that there will be a point in your life, if you have a one that got away, that you won't even remember her name. You won't even remember her name. Maybe not, but for some of you, that's the case. Just some advice from a 45-year-old. Okay. All right, cool. Actually, I guess we're at the end of the comments for today. Okay, cool. So that's the end of the comments. What else can I talk to? I'm trying to think if I missed anything. And there's some cool stuff going on in the comments. I'll let them talk through things. What else can I share with you today? Oh, actually, you know what? We're 45 minutes anyway, so I guess we're about time to end. So let me end like I always end, which is how I kind of begin. And again, if this has been entertaining, or hopefully not just entertaining, but has been in some way made you think about things a little bit differently than you normally do, please come back and join. Typically, I'm here at 5 Eastern Standard Time here in the U.S., which is about an hour, 45 minutes ago from whatever time you are right now. And we'd love to have you back. And I think a lot of this stuff, I try to talk through things, but I talk through them in different ways each time. And ultimately, and you can get some perspective of the bigger picture. So I want to leave you with reminding yourself again. I don't know that I'm kind of curious if people actually, who I start with, I end with, because to some extent, it could be a boring talk as I say the same thing over again. But I think it's what I really want everybody to understand is that I want you to view yourself as a whole person. I want you not to focus on the one or two negative attributes of yourself. And I want myself not to focus on the one or two attributes of myself. Rather, I want to focus on myself as a whole person that has many, many, many positive things, a couple negatives. And in doing so, I can see myself as beautiful, as a whole beautiful person. And what that allows me to do is really realize that I can do anything I want. I can feel free and unencumbered, that I can go and do whatever I want in the world. And I hope that you can feel that freedom yourself as you grow into your own beautiful selves. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate all the comments and the questions, and I hope you'll come back again. And until we can chat again, I hope everyone's well. Cheers.